Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Histories of Hymns, Stories of Songs, episode 18. Today, we'll look at a hymn that I've gotten multiple requests for, Onward, Christian Soldiers. Now, some in our modern society may be tempted to be offended by the militaristic march of this hymn, but I invite you to take a closer look at its true meaning. Rest assured, the purpose of this hymn was never intended to be a call to physical violence, but a metaphor about the spiritual battles we fight every day. Onward, Christian Soldiers was authored by Anglican priest Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould. Baring-Gould was born on January 28, 1834. He spent much of his life in Lew Trenchard Manor, being the eldest son and heir of Edward Baring-Gould, Lord of Lew Trenchard Manor, comprising of 3,000 acres in West Devon in the southwest region of England. One obvious influence to the militaristic lyrics of Onward, Christian Soldiers was Sabine's family. He had military background on both sides. Before Sabine was born, his father Edward was a lieutenant in the Madras Light Cavalry in British India, and his mother, Sophia Charlotte Bond, was the daughter of Admiral Francis Godolphin Bond of the Royal Navy. Sabine spent much of his childhood traveling around Europe, and so the majority of his education was via private tutors. He did attend Cambridge University in 1852, obtaining both a Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts. He took steps to become ordained starting in 1853, and eventually took holy orders in the Anglican Church in 1864, becoming curate at Horbury Ridge, West Riding of Yorkshire. The next year, 1865, is when Baring-Gould wrote Onward, Christian Soldiers. It was originally written as a processional hymn for children, and was entitled Hymn for Procession with Cross and Banners. He apparently wrote it in about 15 minutes, and he even later apologized, thinking that in his haste, some of the lines were faulty. The original melody Baring-Gould used was from the slow movement of Haydn's 15th Symphony in D. This version was printed in 1871 in an Anglican church periodical entitled Church Times, and this is likely where a certain opera composer named Arthur Sullivan took notice. If you've been keeping up with my hymn videos, you may recall that Arthur Sullivan, one half of the comic opera composing duo Gilbert and Sullivan, was also a key player in my last full hymn video. Not the special edition Lincoln's Beard episode, but rather the full episode on Nearer My God to Thee. Now, Sullivan wrote the tune entitled Saint Gertrude, which is the tune used in the vast majority of hymnals for Onward, Christian Soldiers. Saint Gertrude very much has a feeling of a march, which provides an appropriate overlay for the hymn. Around the time he wrote Onward, Christian Soldiers, Sabine Baring-Gould met and fell in love with Grace Taylor, the daughter of a mill hand. They married in 1868 and had 15 children, all but one surviving into adulthood. It was also during this year that Baring-Gould wrote one of his most popular works of literature, Curious Myths of the Middle Ages, which dealt with various medieval superstitions. Baring-Gould became the rector of East Mercia in Essex in 1871. 1 year later, his father Edward died, and Sabine inherited the family estate of Lew Trenchard. His uncle Charles was the main resident there until his death in 1881. It was then that Sabine moved in and was able to appoint himself as parson of the manor's parish, as well as the manor's squire. He did a great deal of work remodeling both the church there and his manor home for more than 30 years after that. Now that he was settled in Lew Trenchard, Baring-Gould began exploring other vocations. He put together various collections of folk songs. First was Songs and Ballads of the West, published in 4 parts between 1889 and 1891, followed by A Garland of Country Songs in 1895, and English Folk Songs for Schools in 1907, the latter of which was widely used in British schools for the next 60 years. He also wrote many novels and almost 200 short stories during this time. When his wife Grace died in 1916, Sabine had carved on her tombstone the Latin motto Dimidium Animae Meae, which means half my soul. Sabine died on January 2nd, 1924, just a few weeks short of his 90th birthday, and was buried at home next to his wife. While some modern Christian denominations have taken Onward Christian Soldiers out of their hymnals, it remains popular amongst many congregants. Perhaps some feel that because we Christians are called to love our neighbor as ourselves, that we're supposed to have a more pacifist approach, and they fear that the militaristic feel of this hymn presents Christianity as something violent. But our Lord Jesus Christ, who indeed told us to love our neighbor as ourselves, also said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace, but a sword." Now, of course, like the hymn, this doesn't refer to literal military conflict. This is a metaphor about how our personal responses to Jesus can bring division, as those who call ourselves Christians need to go all in, making Jesus Christ more important than anything and anyone else in our lives. And rest assured, while we are indeed to love our neighbors as ourselves and do everything to keep peace with other people, every day we as Christians are fighting spiritual battles. In the 6th chapter of his letter to the Ephesians, the Apostle Paul speaks of the metaphorical armor of God, and says this in verse 12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Satan, the prince of darkness, and evil itself, is our enemy. And that is to what this hymn speaks, and why it still resonates with many today.
Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. At the sign of triumph, Satan's host doth flee. On then, Christian soldiers, on to victory. Hell's foundations quiver at the shout of praise. Brothers, lift your voices, loud your anthems raise. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Like a mighty army moves the Church of God. Brothers, we are treading where the saints have trod. We are not divided, soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Onward, soldiers, onward, Christian soldiers, onward, Christian soldiers, onward, onward, Christian soldiers, onward, marching as to war. Onward then, ye people, join our happy throng. Blend with ours your voices in the triumph song. Glory, laud, and honor unto Christ the King. This through countless ages, men and angels sing. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Onward, soldiers, onward, Christian soldiers, onward, Christian soldiers, onward, onward, Christian soldiers, onward, marching onward. Amen. Onward, soldiers. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like or a comment, and if there's a hymn that you would like featured in a future video, please let me know that in the comments. Thank you again, and God bless.